Heidi Alexander and the local Labour Party are encouraging voters to judge the local Tories based on the performance of their national leadership. Fair enough. So the same must be true for Labour. Let's take a look. How about lockdowns? Now, we knew at the time that there was never any evidence to support the idea lockdowns would be an effective intervention in a pandemic. In fact, quite the opposite. At the UK and the WHO level, it was explicit that lockdowns shouldn't be pursued. There were plans for that, and it was predicted by many people at the time that lockdowns would have a net negative impact, as has been the case. And we've seen that in terms of lost school days for children. Many children are still today not back at school. Broken relationships, domestic abuse, suicide rates, closed businesses, closed facilities like our Oasis, the impact on town centres like ours, missed cancer and other screenings, hospital waiting times gone up, supply lines restricted, the impact that would have on inflation. All that was known and predicted at the time, and so has been the case. So where was Keir Starmer's questions? Where was his opposition at the time? And judging by what we now know 3 years on, and we look, for example, at the countries like Nigeria and Sweden that did not pursue lockdown, and they have had economic and health outcomes far superior to ours. So where is Keir Starmer now in terms of raising this and raising questions to make sure that we never see a repeat of this terrible policy? How about vaccine passports? Now, vaccine passports were based on the idea that they would slow or stop transmission of the virus. Now, they couldn't possibly do that because the vaccine itself was never designed or tested to have that impact. So we knew, and they knew at the time, that that couldn't possibly happen. And yet the government supported it. And Keir Starmer not only didn't raise questions, not only didn't oppose it, but he actually voted for it and whipped his MPs to vote for vaccine passports through Parliament, despite having the opportunity to defeat the government because there was a substantial rebellion on the government's backbenches. Where was the effective opposition from Keir Starmer on vaccine passports? I know that vaccines had no impact on transmission. I know that the government knew it because I got freedom of information responses from the Health Security Agency and the NHS admitting that, and yet the government ministers went on and on claiming that all the way through, and Keir Starmer never raised questions and allowed them to go on, and he voted for them. Is that effective opposition? Now, how about COVID treatments? Now, we've seen all around the world there's a whole wide range of successful, effective treatments for COVID, but not in this country. In this country, within 12 months, we had a range of innovative vaccines, experimental vaccines. But 3 years on, we don't have any treatments available to the public at large. Not even any experimental treatments. How can that be? Does that not strike anyone as bizarre? Why are there no questions being raised by the opposition on this? Why are we funneling billions of pounds into a one-horse race? Especially when we can see around the world that there are successful treatments being deployed, and those treatments being a lot cheaper than the vaccine. So is this effective opposition? How about excess deaths? Now, you would expect in a pandemic or after a pandemic that the death rate would decline, but far from going down, it's actually increasing. Excess deaths at the moment are over 20% in England, and yet I don't hear a peep from the opposition. Why are they not asking questions? I think this is not only bizarre, this is scandalous. This should be on the front pages of all the newspapers. It should be headline news. And it should be so because at least the leader of the opposition is making it so. But he's completely silent. A huge national scandal. Excess deaths over 20% after a pandemic. Is this effective opposition? How about Ukraine? Now, we're all in favour of humanitarian efforts and any efforts to prevent international aggression. What we should not be in support of, though, is anything that overlooks opportunities to bring the parties together into negotiation and peace. When it was reported last year that Boris Johnson flew into Ukraine to stop President Zelensky sign a peace agreement with the Russians, why was Keir Starmer silent on that? Why didn't he ask questions at least? It seems rather bizarre. And this week, we hear from Joe Biden's cabinet members that we should be prepared for the Ukraine war to go on for many years to come. This is a long-term thing. Do you hear anything from Keir Starmer asking questions on that, especially given that it's costing the UK taxpayer £2 billion a year, 2 billion last year, 2 billion this year, and presumably for every year after that. This looks like it's set up to become another forever war, another Afghanistan. And yet there's no opposition at all. Is that effective opposition? Now, how about Keir Starmer's own leadership and his own policies? He ran as leader on a platform of 10 pledges. Now, he's gone on in quick succession to break them all. And recently he replaced them with 5 missions. Now, apart from the fact that you can't have 5 missions, that's 4 too many. Does anyone really believe he's got the integrity, given his track record with the 10 broken pledges, to stick by those 5 missions if he gets into power? Keir Starmer hasn't offered any real opposition. He's not offered any effective leadership. Keir Starmer is a go-along, me-too politician. If you want the same, vote the same, of course, whether that's in a blue colour or red colour. If you want something different, please, where you can, consider to vote independent and get some real change. Thank you.